The city burned around her. Towers that once touched the clouds were broken into jagged teeth of metal and stone, glowing red under the weight of fire. Smoke hung in the air like a choking blanket, hiding the stars above. The ground trembled. From distant blasts, each one echoing the sound of a war that should have already ended. She stumbled forward, clutching her side, where dark blood seeped through torn armor. Her breaths came short and sharp, each one carrying the taste of ash. She whispered to herself, not as a prayer, but as a reminder to keep moving. No one was coming. No one ever came back for her. She was already forgotten by her people, left behind to die in the ruins. The enemy wanted her alive, but only long enough to strip her secret away. Death would have been mercy, yet she was not dead not. Yet, her vision blurred as she leaned against a collapsed wall, dragging herself through rubble. Every step felt heavier, her legs shaking as if they carried the weight of an entire world. She had seen soldiers abandon their wounded before. She had seen allies turn their backs to save themselves. Loyalty was a word spoken in training halls. But lost in the fire of war, she expected nothing from anyone. And then she saw him. At first she thought he was a ghost, moving through the smoke. A tall figure in strange battle-scarred armor, his weapon held low but ready. He walked with a calm she did not understand, as if the flames and the ruins were nothing more than background noise. His helmet was broken on one side, revealing a human face streaked with dirt and blood, yet his eyes were steady, sharp, alive. She froze, her hand going to the small blade at her hip, but her grip was weak. She knew if he chose to finish her, she would not even have the strength to resist. Humans were rare here, rare and dangerous. She had heard the stories of their stubbornness, their madness in battle, the way they never let go even when the odds crushed them. She'd never believed those stories, not until now. The human looked at her the way a soldier looks at a battlefield, measuring, judging, deciding. She expected him to turn away, to leave her like everyone else. Instead, he stepped closer. She tried to stand straight, to mask her weakness, but her knees buckled and she collapsed against the wall. He caught her before she hit the ground. One strong arm steadying her broken body. She gasped, more in shock than pain, staring up at him. He should have left. He should have looked the other way. He did not. "Bleeding bad," he said, his voice rough. The accent of earth twisting through the alien tongue they somehow shared. His hand pressed against her wound, firm and unyielding. "Dade," she hissed, pushing weakly at him, but he ignored it. From his belt, he pulled a sealed pack, tearing it open with his teeth, and within seconds, he was patching her side with a speed that spoke of practice. His movements were not kind, not gentle, but efficient, the way someone acts when death has. No patience. "Why?" she whispered, her voice cracked, barely audible. Her people had abandoned her. Even her own commanders had ordered retreat, leaving her stranded. Why would a human, a stranger from another world, choose to stay? His eyes flicked to hers. A moment there was silence, broken only by the crackle of flames. Then he answered in the simplest words possible, "'Cause you're still alive." Ch. The weight of those words struck her harder than the pain in her body. He was not here for glory. He was not here for politics, for power, for her secret. He stayed because she still breathed. That was enough for him. She wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. She could not decide if he was foolish, or something else entirely. He lifted her carefully, as if she weighed nothing, and carried her through the ruins. She wanted to protest, to demand. He'd leave her, but her strength was gone, and the warmth of his grip pulled her into a strange calm. Shadows moved in the distance, enemy patrols searching the wreckage, hunting her scent. The human's steps grew quieter, his body lowering, every motion made with the patience of a predator. He was not just carrying her, he was protecting her. Every glance he made was toward danger. Every choice about where to step was meant to keep her hidden. She did not know his name. She did not know why he was here in a war that was not his. Yet she knew one thing, as clear as the fire around them. He had no reason to stay, and yet he refused to leave. That truth pressed into her chest, harder than the pain of her wound. Did not trust him. She did not even want to. But for the first time since the city fell, she was not alone, and that terrified her more than the enemy ever could. The ruins seemed endless. Every street they crossed looked the same: burnt walls, shattered windows, and bodies turned to ash. The human moved with careful steps, his eyes sharp, his ears tuned to every distant sound. He carried her as if she were both fragile and heavy, his arms steady, his breathing calm. She felt the heat of his chest through the broken layers of armor, each step rocking her gently, as though the chaos of war could not shake him. She had never known someone like this, never known anyone who refused to let go. It unsettled her almost as much as it comforted her. Her mind drifted as he carried her deeper into the shadows. She remembered the council chambers where she had once stood, the weight of her people's future placed on her shoulders. She remembered the order whispered into her ear: protect the secret at all costs, even if it means your life. That was why they hunted her, not for her rank, not for her skills, but for what she carried inside. A truth older than the war itself, a truth dangerous enough to collapse empires. Her people feared it as much as they hoped for it. And now it lived in her, marked on her veins, hidden in her blood. The human did not know. He only knew she was hurt, that she was bleeding, that she was alone. And yet part of her wondered what would happen if he found out. Would he still carry her? Or would he hand her over to the first bidder? She closed her eyes against the thought. Trust was a knife. It cut the moment you stopped watching. They reached the hollow remains of a transport station. Its roof collapsed, its walls leaning like broken bones. The human moved inside, setting her down gently against a wall where the shadows hid her from sight. He crouched in front of her, his hands checking the bandage he had made earlier. His fingers pressed hard to stop the bleeding, and she bit back. A cry. His eyes lifted, meeting hers, and for a moment she saw no pity there, only determination. You'll live, he said, his voice low, certain. It was not a question. It was a command against death itself. You don't know that, she whispered, her voice shaking. His jaw tightened. I've seen worse. You'll live. Something about his tone made her believe him, though she did not want to. He was human. She had been told they were reckless, violent, untrustworthy. And yet here he was, refusing to leave her behind when even her own people had done so. The contradiction pressed hard against the walls she had built inside herself. She wanted to tell him to go, to save himself before the hunters found them both. But as she opened her mouth, the distant sound of boots and mechanical whirs cut through the air. Enemy patrol. The human stiffened, his head turning toward the noise. His hand went to his weapon. He looked back at her only once, his eyes sharp, then he moved silently into the rubble. Her heart pounded as she sat in the shadows, helpless, clutching her side. She heard them approach, metal feet grinding over stone, voices speaking in sharp commands. They were close. Too close. She pressed her back against the wall, holding her breath. She should not have been afraid. She had faced death before.
Oh.
But this was different. For the first time, someone was fighting for her. Gunfire cracked in the distance. Short bursts. Then silence. The seconds dragged like hours. Then through the smoke he returned, not limping, not broken steady, alive. His armor carried fresh burns, and his face was harder than before, but his eyes held the same steady fire. He did not speak. He only reached down, pulled her up, and once again carried her as if nothing could stop him. Her throat tightened. She wanted to ask why. Why risk himself for her? Why fight battles that were not his? But she already knew the answer, he had said. At once, because she was still alive. That was enough. As he carried her deeper into the ruins, she felt the secret inside her burn. The blood in her veins was not ordinary. It was the map to something lost, something the enemy feared, something her people had hidden for generations. And now, a human, of all creatures, was the one protecting it without even knowing. She wondered how long it would stay hidden. She wondered what he would do when he discovered the truth. But for now, as the night deepened and the stars flickered faintly through the smoke, she let herself rest against him. His steps did not falter. His grip did not loosen.
She was not
Safe, not truly, but for the first time since the city fell, she felt the faint spark of hope, and it terrified her more than her secret ever could. The night stretched endlessly, filled with distant echoes of war. The city was a maze of smoke and ruin, and every shadow seemed alive with hunters. The human moved carefully, his senses sharp, while she leaned against him, her strength slipping away with every step. Her body was weak, but her mind was restless. Trapped between fear and something far more dangerous, trust. She had not meant to trust him. He was a stranger, a human, a being she had been warned about her entire life. They said humans were unpredictable, too stubborn to bend and too reckless to survive. Here he was, alive, carrying her through the fire, while her own soldiers had abandoned her. Every time he turned his head to check the streets, every time his hand gripped his weapon ready to fight, she felt something tighten inside her. They stopped in what had once been a market. The stalls were broken, the glass shattered, the signs hanging in crooked silence. He set her down behind a row of burned crates, then crouched near the edge, watching the streets. She studied him as he scanned the ruins, his face sharp with focus, his eyes alive, his breathing steady. She had seen warriors before, but none like him. He fought not for duty, not for orders, but simply because he refused to give up. "Why are you doing this?" she asked at last, her voice breaking through the heavy silence. He didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the streets. "You're alive," he said simply. "That cannot be enough," she whispered. "You don't know me. You don't know what I carry." This time he turned. His eyes met hers, steady and unshaken. "I don't need to know. You're here. That's enough." Her chest tightened. She wanted to tell him the truth, that she was not just a soldier, not just a survivor, that the blood in her veins was marked with a secret that could burn the galaxy. But fear stopped her. What if he left when he found out? What if his loyalty was only to her survival, not to the storm she carried? The secret was too heavy. And yet, hiding it tore at her. Suddenly a sound split the night, a low hum, growing. Louder, closer, patrol drones. She tensed as the machines floated into view, their red sensors sweeping across the ruins. The human pressed her down behind the crates and moved like a shadow, his weapon in hand. She held her breath as the drones hovered closer, scanning the area. One light flicked toward their hiding place. Before it could lock, the human moved. Silent, fast, 2 shots, precise. The drones fell, sparks crackling as they hit the ground. He dragged the wreckage into the shadows and crouched again, listening for more. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You're reckless," she whispered. "Alive," he corrected, his voice calm. She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something she had not felt since before the war safety. It was dangerous. More dangerous than the enemy itself. Safety bred trust, and trust could kill her if she gave it to the wrong person. But every moment she spent with him made it harder to hold her walls. As the night deepened, they moved again, slipping through alleys and ruins. He carried her when she grew weak, never slowing, never letting her fall. At last, they found a ruined shelter, half collapsed but hidden enough. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the walls broken but still standing. He laid her down and checked her wound again, his hand steady, his touch careful. "You should leave me," she said softly, watching his face. "You'll die if you stay." He shook his head. "Not leaving. Why?" Her voice cracked, raw. "Why risk everything for me?" He paused, his eyes searching hers. "Because no one should die alone." Her breath caught. No counsel words. No command, no soldier's vow had ever struck her so deeply. For a moment, she forgot the secret burning in her veins, forgot the hunters searching for her, forgot even the war. For a moment, there was only him, human who refused to let go. But as she drifted into uneasy sleep, the weight of her secret returned. She dreamed of the council chamber, of the mark burned into her blood, of the power hidden in her veins. She dreamed of betrayal and fire, of empires rising and falling. And through it all, she saw his face, steady, unyielding, alive. When she awoke, dawn was breaking through the smoke. He was still there, watching the streets, his weapon ready. He had not left her side. And she knew then, with a chill that shook her, that her secret would not stay hidden forever. The question was no longer if he would find out. The question was what he would do when he did. The morning was gray and heavy, the sun hidden behind smoke and ash. The ruins stretched endlessly around them, broken walls and twisted steel casting long shadows. The human stirred the dust from a corner of the shelter, setting out what little food he had salvaged. His movements were practical, efficient, the actions of someone who had lived too long in survival. She watched him quietly, her mind caught between gratitude and dread. Her wound had not healed. The makeshift bandage was soaked, the pain sharper than before. She tried to hide her weakness, but her body betrayed her, trembling as she shifted against the cracked wall. He noticed immediately. Without a word, he came to her side, unwrapping the cloth, his brow tightening as he saw the damage. "Bleeding too much?" he muttered, his voice low but urgent. She turned her face away. "It will pass." "No," he said firmly, "it won't. You'll die if I don't do something." She felt panic rise in her chest. He could not see more, he could not know. But he was already pulling water from his pack, cleaning the wound. His hands steady, even as the blood spilled across his fingers. She pressed her teeth together, willing herself to stay silent. But when the blood touched the light filtering through the broken roof, she saw his expression change. He froze. His eyes narrowed. The liquid was not the deep red he expected. Shimmered faintly, threads of silver, glinting within the crimson. It was not human. Not normal. Something in it moved like light caught in water, alive in a way blood should not be. "What is this?" His voice was low, sharp with disbelief. Her heart pounded. She wanted to pull away, to hide, but her body was weak. The truth was spilling out of her veins, and there was no way to stop it. "I told you," she whispered, her voice raw. "You don't know me." He looked at her, searching her face, his hands still stained with the shimmering red silver. "What are you?" The silence was heavy, thick enough to choke her. She thought of lying, of pushing him away with words sharp enough to cut. But when she met his eyes, steady and human and stubborn, she found she couldn't. He had carried her when no one else would. He had stayed when others had fled. If there was anyone who deserved the truth, it was him. "I was born marked," she said softly, her voice breaking. The council hid it. "My blood carries power, an old power. They say it belongs to the first rulers, the ones who could command more than armies. It should have been erased from history, but it survived in me." He stared at her, his jaw tight, his silence pressing on her like a weight. "They hunt me," she continued, forcing the words out. "Not because I am weak, but because I could be dangerous. My blood is not meant to exist. If they catch me, they will burn me alive, and anyone who helps me will suffer the same." For a long time, he said nothing. He stood, stepping back, his hands still wet with her blood. She felt her chest tighten, the fear sharper than the pain in her body. This was it? This was when he would leave. When the human would decide she was too dangerous, too strange, too much. But then he knelt back down. He pulled a new strip of cloth from his pack and bound the wound tighter, ignoring the shimmer that stained his fingers. His voice was steady when he finally spoke. "I don't care what's in your blood," he said. "You're still alive. That's enough." Her throat closed. She had prepared herself for betrayal, for fear, even for hatred. She had not prepared for this, his refusal to turn away. His stubborn loyalty stronger than reason. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If they know you've touched me, if they know you've seen, they will kill you." "Let them try," he said. Something inside her cracked then, not from fear but from the weight of his words. It was dangerous, reckless, human in every way. And yet it filled her with a fire she had not felt before. The moment broke when a sound echoed from the street outside, a voice, sharp and commanding. Soldiers. They had found the trail. The human's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes narrowing. He moved fast, checking his weapon, scanning the exits. She tried to rise, but her body betrayed her again, collapsing back against the wall. "Go," she rasped. "Leave me. Can still escape." He shook his head, already positioning himself between her and the broken doorway, not leaving. "Shh, you don't understand," she said desperately, her voice rising with panic. "They're not just soldiers. They are hunters. They won't stop until they have my blood. And if you fight them, if you stay with me, you will be hunted too." He glanced back at her, his expression hard and unyielding. "Then let them hunt." The words struck her like thunder. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope. The world outside was closing in, the enemy steps growing louder. But inside the ruined shelter, there was something stronger than fear. He raised his weapon, ready to face whatever came through the smoke, and she knew then that the human was not going to leave her. Not now, not ever. And as her blood pulsed like fire through her veins, she wondered if perhaps that was the real danger, what they could become together. The sound of boots and broken glass echoed down the ruined street, sharp against the silence. Shadows moved in the smoke, armored figures spreading out with precision, their weapons raised. The human pressed his back against the crumbling wall, every muscle tense. He could hear the orders being shouted, short and clipped, like hammers striking steel. They were closing in fast. Behind him, she tried to push herself upright, her breath shallow, her wound pulling her down like chains. He turned quickly, catching her before she fell. "You can't move like this," he whispered harshly. "Then leave me," she forced out, her voice trembling. "You can still slip away. They don't want you. It's me they're after." He shook his head, jaw tight. "I told you before, not leaving." The look in his eyes silenced her. It was not foolishness or ignorance, it was something heavier. Something stubborn that would not bend even under fire. She felt the weight of it settle into her chest, a strange warmth beneath her fear. The footsteps grew louder. Dust drifted from the ceiling as the soldiers drew closer. He moved quickly, sliding her arm over his shoulder, lifting her with surprising strength. She gasped at the sudden movement, but he held her steady. "Hold on," he said, and without waiting for her reply, he moved. They slipped out the back of the shelter just as the first soldiers stormed the front. Shouts rang out, the clash of boots against stone as they discovered the trail. He didn't look back. He moved fast, carrying her weight without hesitation. Weaving through the shattered streets, the city was a labyrinth of ash and ruin, broken. Towers leaning like dying giants. Smoke curled around the edges of fallen walls, and every corner threatened another patrol. He moved with purpose, his instincts sharp, each step calculated. She could hear the soldiers spreading out, the metallic hum of scanners sweeping the air. "They're everywhere," she whispered against his shoulder. "Then we keep moving," he muttered, his breath steady despite the weight he carried. They slipped through narrow alleys, crawled beneath collapsed beams, and ducked into the shadows of burned-out homes. Once, a patrol passed so close she could see the faint glow of their visors through the cracks in the wall. She held her breath, every heartbeat thundering in her ears, certain they would be found. But he did not move, his body still as stone. His hand pressed gently against her shoulder to keep her calm. Only when the soldiers faded did he move again, silent as a shadow. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The ruins twisted endlessly, yet the soldiers were always near, their voices like wolves howling through the smoke. Her strength waned, her body dragging heavier against him, but he never slowed. Finally, they reached the remains of an old marketplace. The stalls were burned black, the ground littered with broken glass and bones. He lowered her carefully against a stone pillar, scanning the area with sharp eyes. "We can't keep running like this," he said quietly. "They'll catch us in the open. We need cover." She shook her head weakly. "No cover will save me. They have my scent now. My blood carries through the air like a beacon. That is why they always find me." He looked at her, his jaw tightening. "Then we changed the rules." Before she could ask what he meant, he pulled a shard of broken metal from the ground. Without hesitation, he sliced his own palm, blood welling red across his skin. She stared at him in shock. "What are you doing?" she gasped. He smeared the blood across the wall, across the ground, across the rubble around them. "If they want a trail, they'll get one, but not just yours. They won't know which is which." You'll lead them to you, she whispered. Horrified. Good, he said flatly. Let them chase me. It'll buy us time. Her throat closed. He was reckless, impossibly reckless. And yet as she watched him, she felt something powerful stir within her chest. No one had ever chosen to share her burden. No one had ever risked themselves willingly. She had been hunted alone her whole life. Until now, the sound of voices returned, closer, sharper. The soldiers were coming fast. He pulled her up again, his arm firm around her waist. We move, he said, and together they slipped deeper into the maze. The hunt turned fierce. Shouts echoed, weapons cracked through the smoke, bursts of light tearing across the rubble. He moved fast, ducking, weaving, pulling her behind walls as fire sprayed the stones. Debris rained down, the air filled with the stench of burned metal. At one point, a soldier caught sight of them, raising his weapon with a shout. Before she could cry out, the human was already moving, slamming a piece of broken steel into the soldier's throat. The man collapsed soundlessly, and the human dragged her onward, his breath hard, but his movements precise. The more they ran, the clearer it became. This was no ordinary man. His endurance was relentless, his instincts sharp, his will unbreakable. She had seen soldiers, hunters, killers, but never one like him. He carried her as though her weight meant nothing, fought as though he had nothing to lose, and stood between her and death without hesitation. As the night bled into dawn, they reached the outskirts of the ruins. The air was thinner here, less choked by smoke, but the land stretched open and bare. If they crossed it, they would be seen. But if they stayed, the soldiers would corner them. We'll never make it, she said, her voice raw. He tightened his grip on her arm. We'll make it. She wanted to argue, to remind him that her blood marked her, that she was already lost. But when she looked into his eyes, burning with defiance against an entire army, the words died in her throat. The hunt was not over. The hunters would not stop. But for the first time in her life, she was not running alone. And as the human led her toward the rising sun, she felt a dangerous thought take root in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The ruins behind them faded into the haze of smoke and dust, but the human knew they had not escaped. He could feel the hunters pressing in, tightening their circle, cutting off every road that led away from this broken city. The open plains. Ahead stretched far, yet the very emptiness of the land was a trap. Crossing it meant exposure, and exposure meant death. Still, he pressed forward, her weight heavy on his arm, her breath weakening with every step. She tried to protest, to tell him she could no longer go on, but he silenced her with a sharp shake of his head. You stop, you die. That's the only truth left. So keep moving. She did. Not because she believed she could, but because he demanded it. His voice carried no room for argument. It was iron, forged by something she could not yet name. The time they reached the edge of a collapsed transport road, the sky was pale with dawn. Fire still smoldered in the distance, smoke painting the horizon with streaks of black. The human guided her down into the hollow beneath the broken road, a shallow trench of stone and shadow. He set her against the wall, scanning the terrain. With careful eyes, rest here. Just for a moment, he said. His voice was calm, but his posture was not. His head turned constantly, his ears tuned to every shift of wind, every scrape of rubble. He was waiting for the inevitable, and it came at first. It was only a whisper, a rustle in the broken stones, too soft to be the heavy boots of soldiers. Then another sound, a quick movement, and then the faint click of a weapon being primed. He shifted instantly, placing himself in front of her. His hand closing around a shard of steel, figures emerged from the ruins. Not soldiers, not the armored hunters that had pursued them all night. These were different. Their cloaks were dark, their weapons scavenged, their movements quick and hungry. Their eyes gleamed with something worse than orders. Raiders, they stepped into the trench like wolves circling prey. One of them, taller than the rest, grinned as he lifted a rusted blade. Well, what do we have here? A wounded prize, and a fool carrying her. His voice was slick with cruelty. The human said nothing. He stood firm, his shard of steel raised, his body angled between her and them. The raiders laughed. "Do you think you'll fight us with that?" One sneered. "You'll be dead before you take a step." The leader raised his hand, signaling for patience. His eyes moved over the girl, lingering too long, filled with greed. "No need to kill him yet. The wounded one has value. They'll pay for her, and if not, well," his grin widened. Her stomach turned cold. Rat. She had seen men like this before. Scavengers who preyed on the weak, who traded in flesh and blood. She tried to push herself up, but her strength betrayed her. The human's arm pressed her back down gently. "No," he whispered. "I'll handle this." The raiders began to close in, confident in their numbers. 4 of them, each armed, each stronger and healthier than the man standing alone. Yet he did not waver. His eyes burned with the same fire she had seen in the world. Ruins the same defiance that had carried her this far. The first one lunged, swinging his blade low. The human moved fast, faster than she thought possible for someone carrying so much weight. He sidestepped, caught the man's wrist, and drove the shard of steel straight into his throat. Blood sprayed, and the raider collapsed without a sound. The others shouted, rushing him all at once. The trench filled with chaos, the clash of metal, the scrape of boots, the hiss of blades through air. He fought with a brutal efficiency, every movement fueled not by skill alone, but by something deeper. Survival, rage, a refusal to fall. One raider slashed across his arm, cutting deep, but he did not flinch. He twisted, disarmed the man, and slammed his own weapon into the attacker's chest. Another came from behind, only to be grabbed and hurled into the trench wall with bone-breaking force. It was not clean. It was not graceful. It was savage. And it ended with 3 bodies broken in the dirt and one man, the leader, on his knees. Gasping, a blade pressed to his throat, the human's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His eyes were sharp, dangerous, his voice low and cold. "Go back to whatever hole you crawled from. Tell them if they want her, they'll have to go through me." The raider's grin faltered. He nodded quickly, fear swallowing his arrogance, and scrambled away, leaving the dead behind. Silence returned to the trench. Smoke drifted in the pale light. The human wiped the blood from his shard of steel and turned back to her. "You see," he said, his voice rough but steady, "doesn't matter who comes. We keep moving." She looked at him, her chest heavy, with something she did not want to name. He was wounded now, his arm cut, his blood joining hers on the ground. Yet he stood tall, as if pain was nothing, as if death itself had no hold on him. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It's not just them. It's worse. You think you saved me, but you don't know why they want me. You don't know what I carry." His eyes narrowed, but his voice was calm. "Then tell me." She shook her head. "If I tell you, you'll leave me. You'll see me for what I am." He crouched down, his face level with hers, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "I've seen enough already, and I'm still here." Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever chosen to stay when they knew the risk. Her eyes burned, but she said nothing. Above them, in the distance, the sound of soldiers carried through the air once more. The hunters had not stopped. And now, with blood fresh in the dirt, they would be moving faster. The betrayal had come not from her enemies, but from the world itself. Every shadow, every ruin, every man who saw her as nothing but a prize. Yet, in the middle of it all, the human still stood, and she began to fear something she had not feared before. Not death, not capture. But what would happen if she let herself believe in him?